And I'm now going to share my screen. And there's Brendan, so we're good. Oh, hold on, I need to get this screen moved around here a second. Okay, does that look okay, Mr. Rose?
Yes, it does. Yes.
All right, we're gonna get started. I think we're recording and doing off to a good start here. My name is Gary Carpenter. I'm the superintendent of the Fern Ridge School District. I do have a few folks here to help me if I need help. On the technical side, I have Miss Marshall here in the other room, and then just some folks that have been a part of this process. Mr. Rose from RNC Management. They're the firm that's assisted the district in our facilities assessments and long-range facility plan for over long-range facility planning for over the last 10 years. Had a same long-term relationship with Piper Sandler, our bond underwriters. I see we have Brendan here. Appreciate him attending. We also have Taylor Ann and Dylan from Rushlight, who have been helping the district with this current bond and making sure we get out correct and accurate information. So thanks to those folks for being here. As you can see on this slide, our measure number is 20-354. Election day is rapidly approaching. Our agenda for tonight, besides welcoming those of you that are here, we'll go through a history of bonds in Fern Ridge. We'll share current bond information on the scope of the projects that are planned. We'll kind of go through a bonds 101 section, hopefully addressing some common questions. I'll share how to get more information after this if you feel like questions come up in the days to come. And then we'll just open it up to questions and answers. You can type the questions in the chat. We will answer all that we can. If there's something we don't have the brain power or research to get to here, I'll get back to you and post the answer on our bond website. As I mentioned, we are recording it. So in the days to come, once it gets posted on our bond website, I'll definitely share that. Feel free to share with others. Again, wanted to start by welcoming those of you that are attending to gain more information. It shows you have an interest in the district and supporting students in the community. I also just reiterate, got several people here to assist. The district wants to provide voters with all the information they feel they need to make an informed decision, regardless of what that decision is, that it's the best decision for them. We'll take questions in the chat. I'd really encourage you to wait till the end to type them in because I hope to answer a lot of the questions throughout the presentation. But you know, feel free to write them in at any time. Maybe take notes would be the best. And if question pops up and I don't get to it, we'll open up that part of the agenda when we get through. I expect my part, I'll probably be talking a lot, take hopefully around 20 minutes, and we'll then go to some common questions that I've heard, just a few, and then again, we'll open it up, and the latest we'll go is 7. History of bonds in Fern Ridge. Let's just jump in and start there. Back in 1998, the district passed a $9.9 million bond. That the plan then was to have that paid off in 2016. In 2014, the community passed a $26.66 million bond, promoting an anticipated rate of $2.20 per $1,000 of assessed value, which was the historical average back to that previous bond in 98. That bond was to be paid off in 2036. Obviously, the major project in that bond was a new Elmira Elementary School. There was some work done at every building, but obviously a brand new school at Elmira Elementary was the primary project. The district is currently asking voters to consider a bond of $16.115 million. If it's approved, we have applied for and been awarded a $6 million matching grant, which would make the total dollars available for projects that will be done at just over $22 million. The bond does not pass. The free $6 million, the awesome grant that I just talked about, and that's OSCIM is the acronym. I'll go to another district that's currently on the waiting list. The background on this bond really started 3 years ago. In 2021, we applied for 2 grants and received them. The grants were to pay for an updating of our long-range facility plan and to conduct an assessment of all our facilities within the Fern Ridge School District. Using those grant dollars, we hired RNC Management to fund both of those projects. It was a several-month long project to get all that work done, but it was completed. Once it was completed, we gathered a committee that was around 25 members, about a dozen community members, about a dozen staff members, to review those assessments of all of our buildings in the district and consider a bond plan. In the spring, that committee started to meet last spring, a little over a year ago, communicated over the summer, and in the fall of 23, the committee members concluded by looking at all the needs across the district, prioritize those needs into a dollar amount that would allow the district to maintain our historical rate of $2.20 per $1,000 of assessed value. In November of 23, that committee recommended to the board that we go out for a bond to address those facility projects that they put as the highest need in the district. The board approved putting the measure on the ballot this past January. Right away, we started the process of getting filed, got our measure number, and that's where we're at today. What is the work that that committee, what is the list that that committee came up with, the work that would be done if the bond were to pass? Kind of broken into different pools. One of the smaller pools is around safety. In the last bond, there was a lot of safety things done, from improved cameras to vestibules in our elementary schools to reorienting the middle school front office and student entrance, doors at the high school. Again, during the school day, those front doors are locked. You have to go through the office. There was a lot of safety projects done. 2 that we still, that made our final list for this bond were some exterior doors at Elmira High School are very old, replacing those, and adding some perimeter fencing at Elmira Elementary, in particular, a little greater separation of vehicles to the playground in that area. Mechanical, around $3.3 million in that bucket that we have allocated to different projects. The primary projects are going to be around heating and ventilation, and the primary buildings are at the middle school and high school. There'll also be a small airflow balancing project at the middle school. I know the heating and ventilation, it's certainly been a concern for us over the last few years. I will say that we are in much, much better shape than we were 5 years ago. We have, if we go back 2 years, the winter of 22, there was multiple days in the winter where we had a system failure in a building. This past winter, that hasn't occurred at all. We dedicated lots of dollars to this. We hired a firm to help us get control of our systems a little bit more, go through all our systems, do repairs. We're in a much better shape today, but our systems are old and aging, and these are not cheap. As I look out my window here to the middle school, to give you an idea, the primary roof unit on the west wing of the middle school, that unit is very old, and its replacement is $250,000 to get it up on the roof, get it hooked up. That's what one of those units can cost. There's several of them on the middle school. Another piece that isn't really mentioned here, but a large part of our project is to update our control system. They're so antiquated, 20 plus years old. We don't have the ability to monitor room temperatures from one location, make adjustments to the system. If we're able to do that, it should improve things even more. So where we are at now is in a really good spot, but in the years to come, it's just a fact of life that some of these very expensive systems are going to need to be replaced. Parking is another thing that was a high priority to our committee. The two biggest projects being at Veneta and the high school, essentially tearing down the gravel and rebuilding them. We will look at a little portion of this at the middle school to improve some traffic flow. There is mornings and afternoons during pickup and drop off, in particular in the afternoon, where there can become a safety issue with that crosswalk out there, cars backing up onto Territorial, and we're going to get an engineer to look at that and see what some options are that would make it a little bit safer. Really, that Fern Ridge Middle School traffic flow item could almost be moved under a safety headline, but it is in our parking lot pool. Continuing on, education, what's happened in the classrooms. In our last bond, we obviously got a new building at Elmira Elementary, an entire new wing at Veneta Elementary, a lot of work at the high school with that secondary gym, lobby, foyer area. And a lot of this bond is really focused on the middle school. There is some things happening at Veneta, an upgrade to the gym that will not only be good for the students, but all the community youth groups that use that with TSP. At the middle school, just numerous rooms that will be upgraded. In particular, the whole science wing will be modernized. A few other standalone rooms, home ec room, band and choir, room 24, and all classrooms. It will look different depending on the room, but upgrades, whether it's cabinetry or technology, things throughout the building. At the high school, it's kind of similar. Our focus is on the science lab classrooms, of which we have 3 at the high school, and that will be a significant part of the work there. At Elmira Elementary, we're going to look to expand the Bridges area playground and add a walking track similar to the one at Veneta, a wood chip walking track, probably around the property that is immediately west or behind Elmira Elementary School. So those are the primary educational component, classroom component, student impacting educational things that we'll be doing. Significant dollars to our restrooms. Over the last 3 to 4 years, we have done several remodels. The main restroom at the middle school down in the commons area was updated, made more ADA compliant, new appliances, etc. At Veneta Elementary, we've completely upgraded one of the restrooms, but each building has multiple restrooms that could use a lot of work to get them looking and performing a lot better. And continuing on, a big part of our project will be getting to LED lighting at Veneta. The reason it's just at Veneta is because, again, over the last probably 8 years, we have done all the other buildings internally and in combination with grant funds. We've applied for and received EPUD grant funds to completely retrofit Elmira High School. That was the first one that we did. It's all LED lighting, saves on energy, saves on our electric bill, and it's complete. When Elmira Elementary was built, that was all LED lighting. We have almost completed the middle school with LED lighting, again with helping fund around half of that, I believe, with an EPUD grant. And now we're looking at Veneta, the new wing. When it was built, it used LED lighting, but all of the old part of Veneta Elementary needs updating. So that's one energy component. A few little site work things, the playground drainage improvements at Veneta. When it rains there, we have we have several small lakes to do some improvement there, and then some site drainage behind Elmira Elementary School. One project we're working on this summer, whether the bond passes or not, but it could be in conjunction with this, is getting a gravel road behind Elmira Elementary School that a fire truck could get around that building safely and move. So that, again, that's something we're working on planning now and could happen in conjunction with the building of that road. And then the last thing, an athletics complex at the high school at the current site of the track. Tear the track completely out. It's one of the only 440 tracks left in the state of Oregon. Convert it to 400 meter, which is the standard. All of the things that go with an athletic complex, whether it's restrooms, concessions, grandstands. Again, that project will take place in the current location of the track, turf field, besides a big improvement for all of our athletes, allow for more practice time and space, safer, less maintenance. It would definitely be something that not only students of the district could use, but would be a big asset to the community. Right now, our main field, when it rains in the fall, we have to restrict access. Teams can't practice and play on it. We can't let youth programs, middle school or even younger kids play games on it. If we had a turf field, that thing could be in use from dusk till dawn and even past dusk, because we'll be moving over the lights from the main field, reusing those on the new field. They're relatively new. The other thing I'd mention around athletics is if the bond passes, I'm fairly confident that all these estimates are on the conservative side. It's our hope that we could come in, whether it's $100 or $300,000 under that 6.9. We'll be using that money for other field upgrades, outdoor field upgrades at all the buildings for athletic projects. So recently, in the last month, I've had a committee meet with all of our head coaches, athletic directors, PE teachers, and representatives from TSP to talk about creating a list of what these potential projects could be. On the simple end, I would say, let's see, what were some of the projects that they recommended? At the high school, for example, going to hoops that could retract up and down. Or one of the big ones that I'd like to achieve if the bond passes is adding a JV softball and baseball field on our current main football soccer field. That would allow not only our JV and varsity teams to play at home the same night and not travel, but make it easier for others to use, allow us to host tournaments, expand to JV teams, not have to stack games and worry about lights. We could be playing at the same time. Okay, so that's kind of a complete list of the scope of projects. Next, we're going to kind of go into this Bond 101 section. And again, if questions come up, take notes, write them down. If anything I'm saying isn't clear, please don't hesitate when I'm done to type your question into the chat. All right, home values. There are two expressions of property value. First is market value. That refers to how much a home would sell for under normal conditions. If you put your house out on the market right now, it would sell for something that's the market value of the home. Then there's an assessed value. This is the dollar value assigned by the county to home or piece of property for property tax purposes. In Oregon, on average, the assessed value is about 54% of the market value. In Lane County, it's 53%. Since the passage of Measure 50 in 1997, assessed value can only increase by 3% in a year. The exception to that would be a major remodel. If I had a room, indoor garage, a second floor, then it can go above that 3%. But absent that, no one's assessed value can be raised by more than 3% in a year. So if your home is valued at $1, that's the assessed value by the county, even though it might sell, for, let's say, $1.90, the amount that it can increase in the following year would only be assessed to $1.03. Okay. Continuing on, when we go out for a bond, the only thing, I think this is an important part for people to understand, and they'll get a little more clear as we move through this slide deck, and I'm able to share some graphs. But when we go out for a bond, the only thing the district can guarantee is the authority we're given to sell a certain principal amount of bonds. The district can never guarantee a rate. We cannot get, if anybody tells you the rate's going to be 220, I guarantee it, they're fibbing to you. We cannot guarantee that. We can only guarantee the amount of bonds that we're going to sell. For our current bond, we're asking for the authority to sell $16.115 million in principal amount of bonds. And looking at the last bond, our district passed in 14. We got professionals that do this. This is their gig. Piper Sandler are our folks. They estimated the tax rate. Again, it's always conservative, to be $2.20 per $1,000 of assessed value through the duration of the bond, through 2036. That was their guess. $2, I shouldn't say guess. There's a lot of it that goes into it. It's their estimation, $2.20, and it's always conservative. We chose that 220 number as it was our historical average. From 14 back to that bond in 99, there was years where it was 270, there was years where it was under $2. The historical average was around 220. We wanted to promote that. The bond was structured, meaning the amount of money we went out for, then $26 million, the term that we went out for to kind of fit that 220 per thousand. Hopefully that made sense. Our underwriters, as I mentioned, always estimate conservatively, as they, as well as districts or other public entities that sell bonds, would much rather have rates end up being lower than higher to maintain the trust of voters throughout the state when these bond issues come up. The projection for the 14 bond, again, was $2.20 per thousand of assessed value, that would be sufficient to cover the annual debt payments. Should voters approve this bond measure following the sale of the bonds, the primary thing that will influence the rate in the years ahead are growth in property values within the district in the form of new homes or taxable property, as well as the total assessed value of all properties in the district. It's important to note the bond underwriters assume a 3% annual growth rate. And again, I'll explain that a little bit more on a graph and hopefully it becomes a little clearer. The two things that can affect the actual bond rate are the actual growth in assessed value. If it grows faster than 3%, and the way it could do that is there's new properties. There used to be a vacant lot, but now they built 6 homes on it. Well, that vacant lot was taxed at a certain assessed value. Now it's got 6 homes on it. That value went up. Or, as I mentioned earlier, everyone in the community, nobody did any extensive renovations, so their rate just went up 3%. But Gary, he added on a room, his rate might go up, his assessed value could grow at greater than 3%. And then secondly, the interest rates incurred when we sell the bonds. The higher interest rates than assumed can lead to higher bond rates. Lower interest rates can lead to lower bond rates. I'll say it again, Piper Sandler, the bond underwriters, they're always wanting to be conservative in these assumptions because we prefer to have the bond rates come in under what they've estimated, which, as you'll see in a little bit in our 14 bond, that's what occurred. What they expected, what they hoped for, what they estimated, 220 through 2036, but it slowly began to drop. History of bonds in Fern Ridge. This might be one question someone would ask. If we passed a bond in 14 and we expected the rates to remain at $220 per $1,000 of assessed value through 2036 when it was paid off, how are we able to go out for this bond now and keep our rates at 220? In simple terms, our rate has dropped significantly as the total assessed value of all properties in the district has grown at a higher rate than the conservative estimates of bond underwriters, which was at 3%. So if every property in our district was assessed at, let's say, $100, and the following year, there was some new properties, some additions, maybe that total combined value rose to $104 or $105 or $107. Even though my individual home only went up 3%, other homes were built, more people came into the community, maybe a few homes did expand, so their assessed value went up. The second thing that I would mention, I think is critical, is we refinanced, much like you would do your house. In 2021, I believe it was, we refinanced, which saved taxpayers around $1.5 million. In addition, if it's passed, we'll be extending the repayment currently set to expire in 2036. It'll extend it to 2040. So going back to that question, we passed this bond in 14, rates were going to stay at 220 through 2036. How are we able to even go out for one now? Well, again, rates have went up and we refinanced, which again, I'll show you on a graph here in a minute. So here's the first graph that I hope is helpful. Hopefully you can see my cursor. Back in 2001, if we took every property within the boundaries of the Fern Ridge School District, which goes, past Walton, south towards Crow, north towards Junction City, west towards Eugene, every piece of property within our school district boundaries, the total assessed value was $435 million. In 2023, that total assessed value was $1.18 billion. As you can see, back in 2021, the bond rate folks were paying out here for schools was $2.48. The actual, this AV growth, that's called the assessed value. The bond underwriters, again, and I'll show you that kind of when we get to 14, we've consistently estimated 3%, but you can see in 02, it was 4.48, then it was 4.8, then it was 3.5, then it was 7%, 6.37. In the last 22 years, there's only been 3 years where it's been under 3, and that was in 12, 13, and 14. In 2012, it was 1/100th under 3%. In 2013, it was the only year it was really significantly low at 1.33. And in 2014, it was 900ths below that 3%. The average over this 22 years was 4.66%, meaning in all those years combined, the average increase in assessed value of all of our properties out here was 4.66. Okay, what else did I want to show on here? I want to show in 2014, that's when that last bond went out. Our bond underwriters, they were right on. Rounded that, it rounded $2.19. They were spot on. They thought that's what it would be, and we were there. But then the assessed value began to grow at greater than 3% because they predicted conservative estimate, 3% growth, because it was 5.13, more people moving in, more homes being built. Bond rate dropped. It wasn't 220, it was 206. Went to 209, $2 flat, $1.98, 201, 205. So even though the projection in 14 was 220, you can see the percent of assessed value was growing greater than 3%. For those reasons we've talked about, it continued to drop. It went to 187, it went to 171, and that's when we started having these conversations about refinancing. What we sold our bond rates at, what we sold our bonds at, that rate then had changed so much, really over the course of the year. It was kind of a good time to do it, and then it changed, so we stopped, we put it on hold, then it got back good again, worked with Piper Sandler. We refinanced our bonds, again, over the entire time that our repayment schedule, it reduced the burden to taxpayers, that refinancing, by $1.5 million. What we did is we front loaded it. We wanted to kick it up back closer to $2.20 and create this gap, which is what I'll show you on the next slide. I take that back, not the next slide, but it's coming up. So if we go ahead here, 24 through 36, again, only using 3%, but we know historically it's going to grow more than 3%, but we want a conservative number. This is what we'd expect, 210, 208, and then it drops off. Again, with a flat 3%, it's going to be around $1.56 beginning in 2026 and stay that way through the end of the bond. So this is an example, as you see by the headline, without the new bond. Here in a couple years, we're going to continue to drop a little bit. Frankly, we'll probably drop a little bit more because we're going to grow at greater than 3%. Lots of new houses, new properties being developed out here. And then in 2026, because we front loaded it, saved some money on the total debt, it'll drop flat 156, $1.56, $1.55 for the remainder of the bond. Okay, this is a graph that I also think is very helpful. At the top, you'll see we have orange and blue. This is the $16.1 million in bonds that we're going to sell. Piper Sandler recommends doing this in 2 sales to help balance the rate that we're going to have. So that's the way they're shown in this graph. If we took out the colors, the gray is showing us what we would expect without passing a bond. These kind of flat years, hopefully around 220 or a little bit lower, and then it will drop off, be flat through 2036 at just over $1.50, and then the bond is paid off, it will go to 0. We front loaded it, took some debt, put it up here to create this opportunity that if the district wanted to go out and go back to that historical 220 rate, we sell these bonds, it will keep it back at 220 instead of dropping in 2026. It'll get it back up to 220, be consistent through the end, and then add 4 years on, extending the debt to 2040. And this orange and blue combined would be the debt of the new bond. Again, this rate here, 220, well, we can never guarantee it. What I would expect is it would continue to drop, just like it has over the last 22 years. Our rate is not going to, our assessed value will grow slightly higher than 3%. And you can see here, If we go back to 14, they were spot on that first year. Then it just slowly dropped, was dropping off a cliff. This is the point where we refinanced. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, that wasn't too bad. What time is it? 6:30. I went longer than 20 minutes. If after this you have questions that you didn't get answered or you think of something down the road, I can tell you that, we've started promoting this bond. It's been a couple months now. I've had 0 emails, questions about it. I've had 0 people come in to talk to me about it. I've had 0 people call me about it. You can do that anytime. I'm happy to meet with someone, and if I don't know the answer, I'll get it for you. We have a bond dedicated Facebook page, a bond dedicated website page to try to get out accurate information. You can visit either one of those. And we're getting close to your questions, so hopefully you got some. I wanted to list at least a couple common ones that I've heard. One who produced the list of bond projects. Hopefully you followed along. We covered that. We had a community-based long-range facility planning committee. We started meeting in February 2023, assess the district needs, looking at the assessment done by RNC management, met over the course of several months and created this list. Explain the Awesome Grant. Again, the district applied for it. We had to have current long-range facility plans and current facility assessments on file with ODE to be eligible. So we did that. We funded that through a grant, not general fund dollars, and we were awarded it. There's currently a list. I want to say 6 to 8 schools that have it awarded, and if their bond passes, they're getting this money. If it doesn't pass, there's another long list of schools below them. And if, say, I'm on the waiting list the first person on the waiting list, anybody in that top that doesn't pass their bond, their dollars will bump down to them. Oops, let me go back. Last question. How much will this cost me? Again, there's no 100% foolproof way to say this will cost you exactly this, but we want to be upfront. Given the upcoming reduction in the district's current bond payments, property owners' average historical rate of $220 per $1,000 of assessed value, I think it's very conservative to say that will be our rate. As discussed earlier in the presentation, it's a conservative estimate. And as we experienced in our current bond, we saw they projected 220, it continued to drop. This rate may likely be lower. It does extend the debt for 4 years. Currently, we don't pass a bond. 2026, as I mentioned, it's dropping down to $1.55. 2036, it's going to 0. Okay. Now it is question time. Before we get there, I want to finish by again just thanking you for attending. It looks like we have 10 folks in the audience, so I appreciate it. And I will mention again, this is recorded, and I will share that recording in the days to come. Okay. First question. Let me read it first here. Okay, here's the question. I'll read it, and it's appropriate. I've been seeing talk online of a unisex bathroom. Know that I'm interjecting here. I'll finish the question. Know that the term I use is a single stall bathroom, and that's kind of common term in Lane County and other bathrooms that I've visited like this. For example, I visited the senior center in Eugene, there kind of by 5th Street Public Market, that has single stall restrooms. So the question is, I've been seeing talk of a unisex bathroom remodel out for bid currently for the high school. This remodel is not shown on the items that would be done with this bond, but it was posted by a representative of the school that if the bond does pass, that the maintenance reserve funds account that would pay for part of this bathroom model would be reimbursed from funds from this bond, meaning this bond would pay for part of this unisex bathroom. I would like to know if this bathroom is a bathroom that both boys and girls, adult men and women would be accessing at the same time. I'll take the last part first. Yes, anyone can access the bathroom. It's a common open space with single stalls. So it's almost like a closet. It's just 5 or 6 closets, floor to ceiling, next to each other with common sink areas. You're starting to see more and more of these in schools. As far So as far as the use of the bathroom, how it looks, we do have the drawings. We went out for bid. This project is happening this summer, regardless of whether we pass the bond or not. The first part of the question, it's not shown on the items. Yeah, we didn't break out. We know we've allocated around $1 million to bathroom remodels. And the second part, could bond funds be used to reimburse this? It could, and I would expect some bond dollars to help reimburse some of the construction costs, not all of it. The highest priority for our bathrooms will probably get more folks together as we start to dive into the exact bathrooms we want to remodel, the cost. Let's say we have $1.1 million in our total bathroom fund, and we spend $800,000 on remodeling bathrooms at the middle school, other bathrooms at Elmira High School, Veneta Elementary School, and let's say this project at the high school that's happening now costs $500,000, but we have $300,000 left in our pool. As long as we're doing things correctly in the budgeting process now, it could be a possibility that we're reimbursing general funds for this project. If the bond does not pass, then we'll just be using reserve dollars for that high school project. Hopefully that answered it. So if this bond does not pass, then taxpayers' property taxes will go down around 2026 by somewhere between 50 and 60 cents. That is correct. So as I showed on that graph, I'll just back up to show you. This is the page here. Take away the orange and the blue. That would be what we expect. And frankly, I'd expect it to drop even lower if history repeats itself. But assuming 3%, correct. Orange, blue goes away. In 2036, the bond rate out here would be 0. Okay. Those are the only 2 questions I have so far. I appreciate them. I will hang tight for a bit more in case anyone has other questions. Double check my notes, make sure I touched on everything I wanted to. I'll jump in really quick if I don't get any more. Just the experts I have on here: Dylan, Scott, Brendan, Taylor Ann. Is there anything I said that was way off base, inaccurate? Anything I left out that you think is just critical to mention? And we'll start with you, Scott.
No, I think what you conveyed was absolutely accurate. Certainly there's design that will take place post bond, and that'll be a site-based committees that will involve staff and community, parents, etc. But that'll go through those aspects, especially around the educational improvements and the athletic improvements. One item I don't know if it was covered in the presentation was a bond oversight committee. I don't recall if that was mentioned.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so what Scott mentions there was similar to as we did in our bond in 2014. Mr. Rose will help lead those committees. I'll be a part of it, mostly as a listener. But we'll want to get folks from the community. We'll have an application process. I know I've heard folks say, well, you're not going to pick me to be on the committee. I can assure you, maybe there's times where we have a committee slot where there's only one seat. We have to turn some people away. Rarely are we getting so many volunteers for a committee that we're turning you away. If we have folks that are interested in being on this group, absent getting 50 people applying, which would be highly unusual, you can be on this group. And what they do is meet periodically to get updates on where we're at, get feedback, specific feedback and information on how we're spending money, how it's going, answer questions, so that this group has accurate information to go out and share with others around the projects that we're doing. We did it in the 14 bond. That group really continued. They met consistently, at least for the first year. They probably towards the end and projects were getting completed started to peter off. But we definitely, with a successful bond passage, will create what we call a bond oversight committee to meet and be shared information about where dollars are going, how much things cost, and getting updates on, like Scott mentioned, what site level planning teams are talking about and things that are upcoming and in the works. So thanks for mentioning that, Scott. Brendan, you're the brains of this operation. Anything in relation to the bonds that I misspoke on or was inaccurate or that I left out?
Probably calling me the brains, but No, I appreciate that. No, more seriously, I think you hit the nail on the head in what we like to have communicated around the levy rate and the projections or with the bond rate. Because I know folks can get pretty attached to that number. And so I just appreciate you reminding folks of that during the presentation. But no, I think from my perspective, you got everything that I would want to communicate.
Great. Dylan or Taylor Ann, anything from you?
No, I think you nailed it. I would just reiterate that, ballots are out first week of May, and the information you provided is pretty comprehensive, and so I appreciate how thorough you were.
Okay, I do want to, last thing I'll mention, if no other questions pop up, from the district's perspective, from my perspective, I'm here to provide information, try to answer every question I can. While certainly, I'm a proponent of it, I'm not here to tell people to vote yes or no. The district provides information. We have a separate group that I cannot be a part of. It's called the Political Action Committee, run by a bunch of parents and staff members that are out there, promoting vote yes. I definitely appreciate them. They're doing a lot of great work that can be challenging, but they're separate from the district. They're trying to get out yes votes to pass the bond. From my perspective in the district, well, do I think this would be great for the community and the students of this community, the future growth of this community? I do, but that's for the folks that are in this tax base to decide. And if they think it is, then great. I got a lot of work to do in the next 3 to 4 years. If they think it's no, then okay, we'll continue on and maybe try again down the road. Okay, I did get one more question. If the bond isn't passed, what are the options for paying for needed HVAC replacements? Well, we try to maintain, we'd have to use our reserve funds. Specifically within our facilities maintenance, we try to maintain around $1 million in there so that if something major happened, a boiler blew up, we have funds to do that. Over time, we will, need to just be planful and it'll come down to bottom lines. We'll have to start making decisions about staff or programs versus making sure our buildings are heated. We're not in that spot now. As I mentioned, things have improved tremendously, but these systems are aging or really so antiquated for some of them, we can't even use them effectively. For the last year and a half, we've hired a firm. Their name is Alliant. We pay them a contract. It's around $170,000. And they have gone through every inch of our HVAC systems. They're doing some things. I hope to reduce that cost in the years to come. For example, they're doing things like changing all of our filters multiple times a year when they're supposed to be changed. And you might think, like in your house, when I go to Jerry's and buy a filter and stick it in my house, that wouldn't be that big of a project. I can't remember the exact number of filters we have in our district. Do you remember that number, Scott? It's somewhere on the term of like 573 or something, and it takes around a week. There's a few things that in this coming year, we're going to try to train our internal people to take off their plate. So I hope that rate goes down, that contract goes down with them, general maintenance, changing of filters, etc. But for this first year, they've really dialed in all our systems. They know the parts that all our systems need. They know how they work. If there was a hole in a duct, it's been fixed, so we're not heating the crawl space. And everything is now working efficiently. They're just very old at the end of life. And I think the money and dollars we used with Alliant in the last year to help get these systems running has been well spent because we did not experience in the winter what we did in the winter of 22 this past year. I believe this past year there was one morning, I usually get to work around 7, that we had a fault with the boiler at the middle school. And for about the first hour of the school day, it took a while to get the building warmed up. And that's just going to happen when you got, as big of buildings and sites that we have. But for the most part, we've mitigated this immediate problem. We just need to now focus on preparing, the buildings for the next 20 years, the next 50 years.
Here,
okay.
Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I might add to that. So, Your current control system only identifies if a room is hot or cold, and it doesn't give any diagnostic information as to why. And as such, right now, to resolve a problem requires a lot of exploration, a lot of extra time and labor cost to diagnose why that is running hot or cold. With the bond, replacing the control system will have a built-in diagnostic that will reduce that labor time and actually start to pay for itself. And so what you'll be able to do is more quickly diagnose exactly what's going on and be able to shorten that labor investment. So that is one of the primary benefits of putting in a control system that monitors that. Also, the new control system will be able to optimize start and stop times. So like you say, when you have that long ramp up in the morning of warm up, you can program the new control system to be able to come on. So when people are coming at the beginning of the day, the system is on and actually functional and has run through its diagnostics. You don't have that capability now.
Yep. Thanks for that. Okay, what time is it? 6:46. We did keep it under an hour. Again, I thank everybody for coming tonight. We'll get this up in the next few days. Thanks for the questions, and make sure you vote. Thanks. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.